please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18. Well, back home on the Lal Street, the Nifty ended the day below the 10,600 mark and the Sensex barely managed to hold on to that 35,000 mark. Banks actually made a tad bit of recovery in last hour to slightly outperform the benchmark indices, but the real pressure was in the mid-cap space because that one saw a brutal sell-off to slide more than 300 points. But that was about yesterday, the day of expiry, how the queue stacked up at the first day of the new series as well as the last day of the quarter. Nigel joins us with more details of that. Nigel, good morning.
Good morning, Anisha. Thanks so much for that. Well, if you take a look at it, we're looking at the US markets. How do they close overnight? Good queues coming in there. All the three markets ending in the green, so no worries on that front. The problem is Brent crude prices, they're moving again towards that $80 per barrel mark, was at around $78 per barrel mark overnight. So that's not very good news. Continues to sit over the $75 per barrel. We're seeing strength on the dollar index as well. Remember, yesterday the rupee hit the 69 mark for the first time ever. That's the weakest level we have seen. But let's focus on the new series. July series is what we're looking forward to. We ended the past series on a somber note because we ended down with a cut of around 150 points odd. But if you thought we were down 1.5% to around 2.5% on the Nifty Bank, think again, the mid cap and the small cap index, that's got absolutely tarnished. That's down between 5 to around 10% just in the past series, telling you the kind of pain we've seen in the broader markets. Now, the problem is the FIs are selling. Even yesterday, the amount they sold was twice of what the DIs bought. So they sold nearly around 950 crores. The DIs, they are doing their bit. They're trying to pump in around 400 to around 500 crores. But clearly that's not enough. But thank God for them. In this series itself or in this month itself, the FIs have sold more than 10,000 crores or the DIs, they have pumped in nearly around 12,000 crores. So they're taking care on that front. Well, you're looking at the F&O Qs today. The Nifty is starting off the series with a bit of a discount, an 18-point discount, telling you there are some shorts in the position. And in fact, the FIs, they net short because they have nearly around 35% of their positions on the long side and 65% on the short side. Now, that may not be such a bad thing if we can get some good news coming in there. Then we can see some short covering. But for starters, it's clearly indicating that the FIs are a tad bit cautious. They're also buying some puts on the downside in case things go wrong. Well, they have some protection there. But they have written one call for one put. Let's put it simply then. What are the levels we're looking at? Let's get the three levels up, the 50 DMA, the 100 DMA, as well as the 200 DMA. Now, on the downside, the bulls will like to defend the 100 and the 200 DMA. On the upside, the bears will believe they can defend the 50 DMA. So keep an eye out on that front. And remember, the highest open interest as well is at around the 10,600 put. So we'll keep an eye out on that mark. The 10,550 mark becomes extremely crucial.
Absolutely, Nigel. Point taken as far as the long exposure is concerned as well. FII start net short at 65% short exposure. But what are the stocks you're watching out for? It's Friday.
Well, yeah, it's Friday. I would like to watch out for a few other stocks. Anisha is looking good in black as well. But let's focus on, the IT index. Those stocks should be good. We have Accenture's numbers that came out yesterday. Constant currency growth was better than what they expected. And not just that, they revised their guidance as well. So the IT index on the whole should open up in the green. We've already seen a good run, but let's see whether or not we can continue out there. Pharma stocks. Dr. Reddy's is going to be in focus. Now, we have news that's coming in overnight that India, they have got, in fact, a temporary restraining order against the launch of Subexon. So that's temporary in nature. That would mean that Dr. Reddy's is losing out on some sales. That could be perceived as a bit of a negative out there. But you also keep an eye out on Torrent Pharma. That's because, in fact, they have got the US FDA for a cholesterol drug. So that stock should open up in the green. But the bigger news point, I think, in terms of the pharma index overnight is that Amazon, they have bought an online pharmacy, PillPack. Now, that was always feared that they're going to be entering the space and that could raise some competition out there. Overnight, we saw quite a few of these competing stocks were under pressure. Amazon added nearly around 20 billion in terms of market capitalization. So keep an eye out on the pharma index. How disruptive is this going to be is the point that everyone's going to be noting. AU Small Finance has a allotment of shares at a bit of a premium, so keep an eye out on that stock. Titan Mangalam has been telling us all of last evening that big bull Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, he has paid a stake by nearly around 1.5% in the past 1 month. They're still holding nearly around 7.5%, he and his family. So we'll keep an eye out on that stock. Kalpataru, they won a new order, so that stock should open up in the green. Bharat Financial Inclusion, they have done some securitization, the first one in FY19. So keep an eye out on that stock. And GMR, it's been a rank underperformer over the last few years, but the promoters continue to buy from the open market. In this month itself, they bought more than 4 crore shares. In the last few days, they bought nearly around 3.5 crore shares. And Newgen, the stock surprisingly was strong in a weak market yesterday. They won an order. Let's see how much of that is already in the price. And finally, Mangalam's looking to get fit today. Talwarkar's lifestyle, that's listing again. That's the gym business. Let's see how that lists. I think the valuation that we're expecting. The other business is going to be listed, so don't look at that stock, Talwarkar Fitness. We're going to be looking at that. It should list at around 160 to around 180. Have a fit day and a fabulous weekend.
Have a fit day, a fit weekend and a fit life. But it is time now for a short break. Thank you, Nigel, for bringing us all those details. Up next, we'll get you what Finance Secretary Hasmukh Adhia had to say.
Welcome back. This is Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18 that you're watching. Come this weekend and India's biggest and most important tax reform since independence will be celebrating its first anniversary. And ahead of that, CNBC TV18 today yesterday brought some of the architects of this goods and services tax together on one platform. Speaking at the event, Finance Secretary Hasmukh Adhia spelled out the government's priorities regarding GST. The Finance Secretary also shared his outlook on GST revenue collection and added that the government will have to watch revenues before rationalizing items under the 28% tax slab.
We hope within 6 months we should be ready to implement it.
So by the end of this calendar year, you believe?
Yes, we hope so.
Will there be a trial run this time around?
Sorry?
Will there be a trial run this time around before you move with a full-fledged implementation?
I would like it to go through a trial run.
So when do you expect the beta version to hit?
We'll do it sometime between October and December.
October and December is the beta version. So the implementation will only happen in 2019 then?
Yes. Maybe by 1st January we should be implementing. That's our target. But again, technology, you never know, you know. Now, there are only 50 items left. Now, those are big ticket items, some of them, automobile spare parts and things like that. We'll have to see, you know, because we have still not reached that magic number of 1 lakh crore every month consistently. So we'll have to keep watching our revenue. And whenever there is a scope created for giving more concessions, we can one by one or in batches, we can start looking at those items.
But not now.
Immediately, I think it's not going to be so feasible.
Okay, and Kerala's Finance Minister, Mr. Thomas Isaac, summed the experience of the first year of GST as disappointing, while Punjab's Finance Minister, Manpreet Singh Badal, gave the GST rollout an 8 on 10 score. However, he did add that nothing less than perfection in the design of the GST was acceptable. Also speaking at the event, GST Council member from Goa, Bovin Gudino, said the experience so far has been splendid.
There is a give and take, but that doesn't deter me from having my criticism against the GST structure and even more forcibly the experience during the first year. It has been rather a disappointment to me.
Okay.
What we set out, we have very far away from that. There has been very significant reduction in the incidence of tax rate. The ordinary people of India has not drawn any advantage from GST. So that is the one major issue.
Okay.
Secondly, then of course there are clauses in the law like anti-profiteering clause, etc. But they have proved to be very ineffective.
Okay.
Secondly, you must accept the small-scale sector and organized sector, they're in deep trouble. Of course, a concession has been made in raising the threshold of the presumptive tax level. But nevertheless, once you want to trade with the organized sector, you have to come into the GST. And they would lose the kind of comparative advantage they used to have in the pre-GST period.
In a very diverse country like India, the fact that we were able to implement the GST, you know, in a country so diverse, I think I would give it an 8 out of 10. And also pay my tribute to Mr. Chidambaram and Pranab Mukherjee Saab and the whole 10 years. But having said that, I feel that, you know, when this was once in a century legislation where we totally were transforming the tax system from the tax administrator to payer and all. And we were told that we will simplify the whole process. It will give a boost to our economy or GDP, and it will also boost tax revenues.
Yeah.
So all three things have not taken place, and when we talk to the stakeholders, there are, everybody, there are irritants basically. Nothing less than perfection in the design and implementation of the GST is acceptable. If India has to become a superpower, and within my lifetime, and I hope I have another 10 years to live, then we must design it in such a way and implement it in such a way. I mean, after all, GST is a tax which is implemented in about 100 other nations of the world. We can actually go to the, what are internationally recognized as the best practices. And as long as we are willing to listen to each other, and this spirit of cooperative federalism is taken to a next level, we will, there are 200 changes in the law which are coming up. And if some time is given, rather than rush through the legislation, otherwise we're bound to make the same mistake.
If we look at our journey in the last 1 year, I can safely say that during the 1 year, the way it has been implemented, the way GST has worked, it has been a splendid legislation in indirect taxation, which is working very well. Though people belong to different political parties, they thought about India as one country at that point of time. I want to compliment every political party. And this is something... This is something which has to be applauded. Normally, I would say this type of spirits builds up during wars and when all Indians unite. But here was one reform where all Indians united. Why don't we look at that?